He is the longest reigning Chaotic Wrestling heavyweight champion of all time. Sorry, Brian.
Son of a bitch. That's all right. I took it from him, and then now he took it back. It's fitting.
There you go. He's a longtime pal of mine. He's a longtime rival of yours, as we alluded to in many ways.
We can say longtime pal now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
All right. Well, he is Chase Del Monte.
Thank you for having me. I'm not sure how I follow rectal exams, but I'll do my best here.
Michael will demonstrate what he had done if you're so inclined.
We all saw you trip up the stairs.
Yeah, it was
Walking a little funny there, Michael.
little spaghetti legged there, a little bit. So how are you, pal?
I'm doing well.
Better than me.
Take a little umbrage with the fact that 99 episodes it took me to get on here.
This is, a long time coming.
Yeah, I think you should have saved me at least for number 100, but if there's going to be a roast, I'm certainly going to hit up one RJ DeLuise, so you should be expecting a very lengthy voicemail.
RJ DeLuise has been on this podcast numerous times at this point.
Yes, a long-time member of the WPAN Nation, if that's the thing. It's not really, but...
First time, long time.
Definitely. Well, do we want to get right into it? The long and storied history between you, Brian Malonis, and you, Chase Del Monte.
Ooh. Sure.
In front of the camera and behind the camera. Let's start hot here. As Coach Hollywood would say, let's start hot.
This is what he does. He completely like just gets me all intertwined in these things.
Michael, we've just recently put this all to bed and, moved on and let bygones be bygones. And now here you are bringing the past, back to the forefront.
So now it's just fun.
We should have really made it something and brought Fred Sampson back, and he could have told a firsthand story.
Really? So what's?
Well, we'll get to that, Mike. That's the main event.
Yeah. You
don't start with the main event.
Oh, okay.
No, that particular point.
It's a teaser, Mike.
You go.
Keeps the listener, involved.
I should know
Why
that.
am I hosting this podcast with you? Why aren't me and Chase doing it?
Seriously, I've been asking myself that for a long time.
Well, then, Brian, what is your first memory of Chase Del Monte?
Ketchup shirt.
I was known for my very eclectic version of T-shirts that I would wear to practice.
And then the Big Gulp shirt, right? We used to call you Big Gulp.
Yes, the 7-Eleven shirt that I just happened to throw on one day for practice, and one Pistol Pete Malloy in a promo made a reference about Big Gulps, and that took for quite some time.
Yeah, you were Big Gulp for quite a while.
Crockett doesn't ever update the names in his phone. You're probably Big Gulp in his phone still.
I'm pretty sure I'm still Big Gulp in many of the Logan's phones.
I know, like Max Bauer, his name on my phone was Max Tampax for a very long time.
I think I was Buffet in your phone until fairly recently, right?
I think so. My first memory, I think, was the 7-Eleven T-shirt and you being Big Gulp.
Yeah, that was only probably my second or third week of class,
Wore
too.
that shirt one time.
Yeah. Come to think of it, that was my very first class match at the CTC, and I believe that was my third week of class.
What year did you start?
That was September of 2003.
Wow. Long time ago.
Goes way back.
Yeah, it's a long, long time ago now.
Crockett had already been in the business 17 years at that point.
So what brought you to it? Because you were a Jersey fella.
Jersey boy from the Jersey Shore.
What brought you to the Chaotic Training Center, which is now the New England Pro Wrestling Academy?
Well, I was just finishing up at Villanova. I'd graduated and didn't really have much in the line of prospects or any idea really of what I was going to be doing.
Many college graduates feel the same way, me included.
So, I was always a huge professional wrestling fan and had gotten myself in pretty good shape. So I kind of thought, if there was a chance, probably right after college was the time to do it. A friend of mine who graduated the year before me was getting a house in Somerville. I'd already, heard legends about Killer Kowalski and his professional wrestling school, and that being right in Malden, we were going to be living right in Somerville. I thought it would be, pretty easy. So in August, I came up to meet with Killer. Killer was just about to close his school, so I met with him. We talked for a little bit, and he gave me a pamphlet for the CTC and said he'd be moving his school up there in a couple weeks. So then I went back home to Jersey, packed all my stuff up, was up in Massachusetts the first week of September. I met with Jamie, paid off, drove home that weekend. My sister got married. The following Tuesday after my sister got married, I went to my first class, and I don't think I've gone more than a couple weeks without being in that building since.
Wow. It's a long
Crazy.
time.
Yeah. I remember I had a run like that for quite some time, and now I feel pretty foreign there when I go.
Not a lot has changed. The name has changed, but the place still kind of feels the same.
Yeah, it has, it's gone through many different trainers and now ownership, but it'll always be the CTC to me.
Yeah, same here. I know when we plug it, obviously, we'll give the right name, but
Yeah.
for the purposes of this podcast, it will be the CTC.
I mean, it is the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, outward facing, to other people, I would say that, but to old folks like us, the Logans, it'll always just be the CTC.
Right. So how long was it when you started training to when you had your first match?
So, speaking of Cold Fury, my very first time on a show in front of a crowd was at Cold Fury 3.
Really?
Yes.
The Battle Royal or some sort?
Battle Royal. And that, I believe, Cold Fury actually used to be, more towards the winter.
Yeah.
It was actually cold out.
So it was actually in January, I believe, mid-January of that year. So it was about 4 months before I was on shows. After that, it was another 2 or 3 before then I was on shows fully.
I remember a match. I thought your first match was against Minnie on
That was my first singles match. Was in AWE at the PAV, which Chaotic would then go on to steal.
I think we mentioned this before. Yeah.
Yes, a very smaller promotion was running that building, and they weren't really packing the house, so we kind of snuck in and took it. But yes, I did have a 15-minute
Epic
encounter that I remember showing to one Dukes Dalton, who gave me some faint praise for the match because everything we did, looked okay. He just told me that's not really the match that I should be having at this point, and that we did way too much.
Yeah, WrestleMania-esque.
Yes, it was probably at least 15 minutes for my first match, and me and Minnie had been talking about that match for 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even longer than that prior. So, I mean, I was like, getting in the shower, thinking about what the next sequence was, just, thinking about, just he would randomly tell me a spot and I would have to fill in the match from there. So
it's like Steamboat Savage.
Yes, it was very much along not towards quality, but in terms of formatting, that is kind of how it was. We had everything. I mean, there probably wasn't even a single, kick or punch thrown that wasn't predetermined.
So what'd you say to Dukes in response? We were just like, just as the people. They loved it.
No, I mean, Dukes really helped me out a lot in the beginning. He was around a lot more in those days, kind of in the beginning, and he, Hollow kind of was in the different rings, so I kind of got to work with him a lot, and he really showed me kind of, not that what we did with me and Minnie was wrong, but just kind of why there's more to it than that, and kind of like the art around it. He broke down at one point, about just like facials and selling and stuff, and, asking why we didn't get more out of it. And, my answer was, well, I had to get over to the corner because I was about to be whipped off to the other corner and we had an up and over to do. And, and he kind of, stopped me right there and was like, well, he's like, that's, that kind of right there is your answer. He's like, you live in the moments there, and there's no time in between. If you're just kind of running through a preset format of moves, then there's no time to actually, sell the story that you're trying to tell. I didn't take it harshly. I looked at it and tried to come from there, but that wouldn't be my last epic encounter with the Mighty Minnie.
So for that match, did you have the Chase Del Monte name?
Let's see. I didn't have Del Monte yet. I believe I was Chase Dyson.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Chase Dyson.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever heard this before.
Yeah, it was a one-off. I wanted to be Kid Delicious 2K4 as a tribute to Mr. Dukes Dalton, but the booker and top heel of the company was Delicious D. So clearly that was a conflict of interest that we could not have two people with the name Delicious on a show.
Makes sense to me.
So many people would have cared deeply.
Yeah, all 10 people in the audience, that's all they would have talked about.
Brand confusion.
But then I believe it was my second show up in Maine, maybe second or third, but it was a show in the East Bum of Maine, which I believe drew the smallest audience I've ever performed in front of. You guys might have been there.
Is that the one run by
Louis Barbosa?
Yes.
You weren't on that? I don't think I was on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That was one to remember. So I knew I wanted to keep Chase, which I had actually stolen from Andre Lyons. He was going to use the name Chase Proctor. And I remember laughing at him and just telling him how awful of a name that was. And he told me, he was like, all right. He's like, Chase Proctor's pretty bad. He's like, but you got to give it to me. Chase is a pretty good first name. And I was like, it is a good name. In fact, it's going to be mine.
It will be mine.
But I was without a last name. This was my, second show, and all the boys, we were sitting around in the parking lot. I think we had gotten the ring, which was an ordeal in itself due to the building. And someone asked me what my last name was going to be, and since I had the name Dyson, people started using the letter D and just kind of throwing things out. And it was the Mighty Minnie again, who then threw out Del Monte, and everyone popped. Everyone laughed, and I'm the only one sitting there with just boo-boo face, like, that name sucks. Like, what am I, a Spanish conquistador? Like, Del Monte? I was like, I don't get it. And, like, everyone was laughing. They're like, oh, no, that's awesome. And I was just like, I don't want to use that. And Minnie, looked at me and said, he's just like, all right, well, it's 4 o'clock now. Bell time's at 7 o'clock. He's like, you got 3 hours to come up with a better name, or you're Chase Del Monte. And 14, 15 years later, still haven't thought of anything better.
Yeah, I was like, where'd that come from?
And I mean, it ended up, as people know me, I am quite the ketchup connoisseur. So it does kind of have some tie-in, but yeah, it was just completely random, just off the top of Minnie's head.
Sometimes stuff just flows. Like, it just,
The thing that I did then learn to like about it is that it didn't need that like second name or like nickname, like, like a high flying or anything like that. Like, it does kind of just roll, it kind of has its own kind of je ne sais quoi, if you will.
It's funny because I thought there was like more behind it, because once I thought about it, like Chase Del Monte, John Bon Jovi, because that your gimmick was like a Jersey Shore kind of rocker.
Yeah.
That was just coincidence completely?
So a lot of this will come back to the Mighty Minnie. You're going to see that that's a recurring theme in my early years. It was coming to my first show, and Minnie had asked me what I'd been thinking about entrance music, and I knew I was going to, hail from the Jersey Shore. So, my thinking was I was going to either come out to something Bruce Springsteen or something Bon Jovi. So Living on a Prayer, I had a couple Springsteen songs. And I think the first thing I queued up was Bad Medicine for Minnie, and he heard the opening chords of it, and he just goes, I don't care what, he's like, I'm not listening to anything else. He goes, that's your music. So I came out to that, it was, it's incredible entrance music. He really, those opening chords were awesome. And I was wrestling in the first pair of gear that I had made were these long blue tights. They had this like white design on them. And I think Craig Stratton's borrowed black lace-up boots. Because I had ordered boots from Stagecoach, the boots I still wrestle in, but they hadn't come in on time. So I was, kind of buying my time. And it was probably my third or fourth chaotic match. And, before then, I had gotten my gear from Easy Money, so I kind of had a relationship with him. And Minnie came over one day for Raw and literally told me on the car ride down to Somerville, he had this thought that I should wrestle in pleather biker shorts. And, I should wear like some sort of like rock and roll t-shirt, like maybe a Bon Jovi shirt over it and like, a headband and stuff. Or maybe I had the bandana, I forget. But, I got an express gear made from Easy Money, my baby blue biker shorts. I went on eBay because there was no Amazon at the time, ordered myself a Bon Jovi tour shirt, went to a store, got a white bandana. And I mean, again, my gear to this day is pretty much hasn't evolved all that much more.
And you were paired with a person when you first started.
I was hoping we would just kind of brush over that time. Yeah.
Well, we can gloss over it. Sparkles was your manager.
Yada, yada, yada.
Sparkles was my manager.
How did you feel about this? This wasn't your decision, I'm taking it.
No.
Minnie didn't come to you one day and say, I was driving on the way here. I said, you need a adolescent girl.
Yes.
But something good did come out of it. She taught you how to do your finisher.
It's true. To this day, still doing that Sparkles cutter. God.
So a little background. Sparkles is the only person in, I think, the time we've talked about this the other day. Mm-hmm. We talked about this really recently. We've been around, for about the same amount of time, and the only person the entire time we've been a part of Chaotic Wrestling that has been kicked out of the locker room.
Yes. And so I will say, just in case she is listening, she was a very nice girl, and she became almost like a kid sister to me. But I was like a 22-year-old, guy out of college. She was like a 16-year-old girl. it was almost like creepy, like, just having this like little like kid around. And the deal was that, Ken Phoenix at the time had just gone to the WWE. Now Ken Doan, she was managing him. He had left, and she was kind of, without
in limbo,
in limbo without anybody to manage. I'd done a couple shows now. I was probably 3 or 4 months in, but I've had a bunch of singles matches. I had a bunch of friends that were coming to shows when I first started that, combined with, I'd like to think some natural charisma and fire, along with my drunken idiot friends cheering their faces off for me, it kind of just caught on. It was a contagious energy. So I was getting really, really over. So they kind of looked at it like, oh, well, we always wanted to pair Sparkles with an over baby face I wasn't really around when Ken was around, but I hear he wasn't that over and chaotic. So they decided, kind of opposite of what's usually done with a manager. Instead of giving a manager to a guy who can't talk or is having issues getting over, they gave me a manager in order to get her over, which is a little bit backwards.
Maybe a little.
But it is what it is,
She wasn't malicious. She just She was young, dumb, and put in a position that she probably shouldn't have been put in.
I mean, wrestling in general, I always say, is like an island of misfit toys. There's kind of a place for everybody. It's it's a lot of outsiders. It's a lot of people looking for a group, and that's what she was. She didn't have a lot of friends. She didn't really have like any real interests or hobbies or anything to really belong to. She had a relationship with Jamie. She was his babysitter, I believe, is how she first kind of found out about Chaotic. And she kind of just became, I don't know, like the kid sister of the CTC. Like, she was just kind of in and around. So she never did anything, as you said, like maliciously. It's not like she ever had any bad intentions. She was just a 16, 17-year-old girl. Like,
yeah, we're all guys in our 20s, and this annoying teenage girl is hanging around.
I mean, it literally is.
When I say annoying, I don't mean like her, just teenage girls. And sorry, I don't think our demographic's teenage
general?
girls anyways. But yeah, in general, teenage girls are obnoxious.
Yeah, and she wasn't really the wrestling type. She wasn't very athletic. She wasn't. She didn't even really seem to really like wrestling that much. Again, it would just seem to be some place for her to go, something to do. And, that was my cross to bear for a couple of years.
And it didn't last that long in the grand scheme of things.
In the grand scheme of things, no. I think it was
integral part of one of our feuds.
Yeah. I think she was the feud. I think we were just the background. We just had to fill in the work. Yeah. But no, I think it was probably about 1.5, 2 years, and then mercifully it came to an end.
And you talked about being over. I think probably Brian will agree with me. In the Lowell PAV, just remembering the cheers that Chase would get when he would get in the ring and like want to give out he would throw his headband out in the crowd.
Oh yeah, I had to sit there many a times and watch him.
Just the place was shaking.
Do that to the crowd.
Yeah. It was like amazing how over he was. Like probably one of the like top 5 guys that were over in chaotic wrestling history.
Absolutely.
I'd put myself at number 1, but
So you talked about feuding with the great Brian Malonis here. Did you win your first championship from him?
I did. My first New England Championship match. I believe that
main evented that show.
Yeah.
Right? That was a big moment for both of us because it was both of our first main events.
Yeah.
Like it was funny. Like we kind of paralleled each other on opposite sides of the card. Like I had started to really get over as a heel. He was getting over as a babyface, and Pants had this idea to put us together and actually have us main event a show, which at that point in Chaotic is, the New England title never really main evented, and we were two of the younger guys on the card and newer guys coming up, and like
the New England title always can now is more available to main event a show, but it's usually in a gimmick match. We were just a straight up kind of grudge match, and oddly enough, we've it's kind of always been the way with us is that we've kind of always like circled back, because we had a feud this summer before, and then that kind of ended. That was really more around Sparkles and Cherry Payne. Then we kind of both diverged again and kind of did our own things for a little while. And then come spring, it was probably spring of 2005, was when then we kind of, again, came back together and had that New England title feud.
So when did you first go down to Delaware for the ECWA, Jim Kettner?
Jim Kettner's. So Jim came up It was probably the summer of '04. That was just when we started doing the talent exchange with IWF and ECWA. You know, they were bringing down some people. You know, Jim was very high on Arch Kincaid, so Arch was coming down every show, and then Andre had gone down. I believe Handsome did a show, maybe B Black. And then Kettner finally came up to Chaotic, and he saw my babyface character, and I had no idea who Jim Kettner was. Pants. I remember Pants saying something to me as I walked in, like, "Make sure you go say hello to that guy. That's Jim Kettner." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh, Jim Kettner.
Sure, Pants. I don't know who that is, but if you say so, I'll do it. So I did, and then Jim pulled me aside afterward. He was very high on my character, my energy, the charisma, and he offered me to come down, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." I was like, I had heard about the talent exchange, and he made it very abundantly clear to me that it was kind of outside of that. He was very interested in having me down there more as a part of his roster. And from that first show that I did, probably fall of '04, I worked for him for the next 7 to 8 years.
Jesus.
It's a lot of trips back and forth to Delaware.
It's a lot of trips down to Delaware.
Yeah.
They took their toll on me.
We did a couple of those drives together.
We did.
I think we did one with Arch Kincaid.
Yes, we did a couple with Michael Crockett as well.
There you go. Yeah, I did it for a couple of years, maybe a little less than, but 7 or 8 years. Jesus, 7, 8 hours.
I was more sporadic than you guys were. I'd have like a stretch of 3 or 4 in a row. Then I'd be off for a while. Then maybe have a couple more, and then random things here and there.
You guys got to experience breakfast at Casa del Monte.
I did, yeah. A ketchup right in the middle of the table.
That became.
I think mine was more though. I think when we went to TV.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was with Biff.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Those tales have been told on this podcast before.
I think I've heard that one.
We can bring them up again though. That's a fun time at TV.
We can also skip over them just as easily.
So yeah, you kind of use the trips to Delaware as a way to go back and visit home, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that's again for 7 or 8 years, the trips down to Delaware was a 6-hour trip down usually, and that's with no traffic, kind of flying down. So I mean, it's a 12-hour car ride if you're going to go there and back. But luckily for me, the Logans came on shortly thereafter. I might have only done a show or two with Arch and John Walters, and I believe you, that we were driving down and staying at GMC's. So then the Logans came, and by the time the Logans came on, then we had 6 people coming down. So we had 2 cars. Me and the Logans both lived in Lowell. We knew each other from shows, but we actually hadn't really known each other. We didn't really hang out. We weren't really spending that much time together. And it wasn't until our first trip down to Delaware where we really became friends. But then, we would always try to leave on a Friday night, drive through the night, stay at my parents' house in Jersey. So I would get to see my family, get to see my sister and her kids. Then we would go to the show. And since I went to Villanova, I still had friends in the Villanova area, which was only a half hour from Delaware. So then after the shows, we would go into Philadelphia and party with my friends. So for a very long time, it really wasn't, just a wrestling trip. We really got to, I got to see my friends, I got to see my family. So it really became like full road trip weekends. And I mean, the time we spent at ECWA was, one of the smaller parts of the trip, so it wasn't really just, the trips down and back in the same day. Those were the taxing ones.
Yeah.
But, when you got to spend a whole weekend, I got to see my family, got to, go back to Villanova and see friends and stuff, it really became more of like a party trip than, just like a wrestling trip down for a show.
So let's talk about Brian and Matt Logan, who you first really got friendly with them on these trips. Now, I guess you're pretty friendly with them now, right?
Yes. We've really become more like family, I'd say. We have our wrestling stable, the Mill City Hooligans. But, it's we are a shoot. We are family. I mean, I consider them my brothers. They are my Massachusetts family.
Lived with them for a long time, right?
Yes. Me and Brian lived together for 4 or 5 years. Holidays together. We vacation together. That's part of our chemistry in the ring is, it's a shoot. Be it babyface or heel, we do care about each other. We kind of know what the other person's going to do before they do it. So, it just helps with that kind of in-ring chemistry.
So, Chase, you've had kind of short runs in many different promotions. I mean, save the ECWA. You've kind of popped in and out here and there, but you've always kind of been a chaotic wrestling guy primarily. Is there a reason why you didn't, had a short run in NECW, a bunch of different promotions locally, but you're always a chaotic wrestling guy?
Yeah. I compare it to, today's times, how the business has changed, especially with Brian doing like ROH and shit. Can I
It's
curse?
fine. Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Good. But, and it goes to the Logans too. Like, we weren't hustlers. Like, we didn't, actively chase bookings. Like, we never were really going out there and getting our name out there to a fault. Like, I knew I was good and I figured like, if people saw my work, they should want to book me because I'm good and I'll add value to your shows. So, all my other different runs and different companies, were from either other people hearing of me and they would have the book at a place, or a lot of times the Logans would get booked somewhere and I would come, around and, again, then I would get on the show and then I would continue to, once they saw me work, then they would decide to book me. But, I never really had that. Not that I wasn't hungry, like I obviously had passion for it, but it just never like that drive to like really go out there and put my name out there. Like, Brian, I think we've talked about it too. Like that really wasn't instilled in us. Like, and the business was a lot different, 14 years ago. Like,
it was dog shit.
yeah.
But it was also, I think it's also the way we were bred too, because for a long time I was the same way. Like, I didn't go out and get bookings or whatever. Then it was because it was chaotic and then WWE or bust.
There was a long time where we were kind of urged not to take a lot of bookings and not just throw our names out there and like, work a ton of, shitbag shows and like put our
garbage promotions.
Typical indie garbage. So, it was tough. And then like, then after everybody kind of gets, after 6 or 7 years, you kind of get grizzled and get a little chip on your shoulder, and then you kind of like feel like they should be coming to me. Like, why aren't people knocking on my door? And it's like, no one knows who you are, bozo.
You didn't really actively seek out WWE per se, but I know you did do a weekend where you were Matt Hardy.
I was Matt Hardy.
Let's talk about this.
So that was very early on. That was probably my second year. That was probably the summer of 2005, because I still it was before I'd cut my hair and dyed it blonde, so I still had the really long brown hair, and it wasn't as crazy as it was. So it must have been like spring and summer of 2005. And it was just, Edge and Matt Hardy were doing that gimmick, after Edge stole Lita from him and stuff. So Matt Hardy was fired, and then he had just come back. And so, I guess for passing glimpse, I looked like Matt Hardy, the long brown hair, close enough. So they were doing a house show loop, Hampton Beach, Cohasset,
it's like the
Melody Tent.
The tent shows or whatever.
Yeah, the normal New England loop that they do like every summer. So it was the coolest experience probably that I've had, especially, TVs are kind of weird and, walking on eggshells. Like, it was none of that. Like, it was just a house show, 3 of them. So like everybody's so much more laid back. Heartbreaker and Tom were there at that point. They were doing the Heartbreakers, kind of on the house show circuit. So I had 2 guys that I knew from the indies there. And
so how did it come about? I'm sorry. How did
So Jamie came up to me and believe I was working for him at Undercoverwear at the time, and just kind of came up to me and he's like, "What are you doing this weekend?" And he's just I was like, "Nothing." And he's just like, "Would you want to go to the house shows?" And he's like, "WE just called me. They said they need a guy with long brown hair." And he's like, and I sent them your picture and they said, that he'll work. So I basically had to go out and I got, I had to get like a black Hot Topic shirt and like a black studded belt to kind of look like, the Hardys would look. And that was the cool thing. Like, I didn't go with anybody. There was no one there. Like, I basically just drove with my gear bag, my button-down shirt and dress pants, and then just kind of like strolled in. And again, the coolest thing is that like it's just in the back of the Hampton Beach was the first one at the casino, which I've seen 1,000 concerts at. Mm-hmm. So like the locker room area is like really shitty back there. Like there's just not a lot of space. So it's like you're kind of in tight, and there's no one to check in with. There's nothing really to do. Like I'm just kind of like milling about, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm the extras, I'm here," and they're just like, "Yeah, go for it." Like no one really stopped me or anything. I was just sitting in the locker room, and since I was going to be doing a spot with Edge, like Edge was awesome. He did the indies and stuff, so he kind of got it. He's obviously he had things to do, talk over his match, whatever. But he was awesome. Kept coming back to me, making sure like I was all right. But the coolest thing of the entire time was I got to hang out with Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels for 3 nights. Like, because I would just be a fly on the wall, and Ric Flair had one of his wives, maybe his third by that time, I don't know. Yeah. But she was back there, and she was staying in the locker room, and she didn't know anybody. So we were kind of like the 2 like odd men out. Like she didn't know any of the boys. Like this was like I think one of her first times on the road. So like she was just kind of in the back, and I was just kind of hanging out. So we just kind of like just kind of like sat and talked together because everyone else was like doing things and we were just kind of there with nothing to do.
Chase, this story would have been a hell of a lot better if you would have said you were the reason why he's no longer married to her.
Well, he did divorce.
But so then like, Rick and Sean were doing, we're working that loop. So I got to like, since I was like kind of talking with her, like most of the time, like they would come back around and just got to listen to Sean and Rick just joke around and, trade stories. And, Sean was saying something about like kind of the crappy conditions of Hampton. And he's just like, yeah, like anybody can walk in here. I was like, how do you think I got here? I just walked in with a suitcase and everyone just assumed I'm a wrestler. He's like, see, this guy gets it. So I popped Shawn Michaels and like, that was 2 years in. And I was like, I can die right now. Like, this is
George
great.
Costanza.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it.
So what was actually the spot you were booked for to do?
So it basically was the main event. It was going to be Edge versus John Cena. Edge would come out and kind of do a promo, and I would come with like, a black Scully cap on, sunglasses with the long brown hair kind of creeping out the back. And I would look kind of like I was like ring crew. Like I would kind of like, I was told to look shady but not suspect. Like, like what? Yeah. So they're like, so like they told me like, look like you're fixing the ring, but don't actually touch the ring.
Who told you that?
Arn Anderson.
Okay.
So they went over it with me, and like, I'm supposed to get into the, like, I'm kind of like looking at things, like pulling up the aprons, like checking the turnbuckles, like gimmicking the corner buckles and stuff. And then Edge is doing his promo, and then like, they gave me like, by this time, like, be in the ring, like on your knees, like in the corner. So Edge is talking about Matt Hardy and how he'd been surprising him time and time again. And then, he kind of gives me the side-eyed look of like, oh, that's Matt Hardy again. And he just bum rushes me in the corner, pulls me out into the middle, starts, beating the crap out of me until my glasses and hat come off. And then he like pulls me up by the hair, and clearly I'm not Matt Hardy. And, then like he just like drops me to the ground, like is like, surprised that like, who it is. And then John Cena's music hits. Cena comes storming out of the ring, and I just fell to the ground and walked to the back.
So no spear? Damn it.
Did you go, hey, brother, here's what I'm thinking.
Well, after the first night, I had to tell John, I was like, John, you got to slow down. I got to sell, I got to get to the back.
You're taking the heat off.
Yeah, you're making me look like a Jabba kid.
So you did the 3 nights, and did you get any feedback or anything from people?
Not really. Like, Arn Anderson after the first one gave me some like pointers on how to sell it a little bit, and, kind of like things for the facials, and the spot changed, very minorly about like, where I was supposed to be and kind of like, what I was supposed to do before and after. At one of them, like the backstage area got closed off. Like, it's like the entry, and like, the Melody tents, it's not like just like there's no entryway, there's no ramp. And like I kind of got separated. So I was like walking outside the back and like had a little trouble getting into the locker room. There was like, kids obviously following me like, didn't you just got beat up? Leave me alone. So yeah, I mean, like, they gave me minor feedback, but with the house shows, I guess it's kind of similar. Like, like everyone else is like doing so much. Like the producers has other things to do. Back then it was very different. The boys are all talking about where they're going out, after the show and stuff. So I was really like an afterthought, and at that point I was really only brought in as an extra. I don't even know if the guy, they really knew like I was an actual worker and stuff. I talked to Heartbreaker and Tom. They were going to try and get me into the ring one of the last days. But between everything else going on, I never really got to step into the ring. So, but I had my fun. It was, a great overall experience.
You get paid?
I did get paid.
You get paid then?
I got paid a lot.
Really?
And in cash.
Really?
Yeah. It was great back then. That was before they cut the paydays.
Yeah.
It was cash in hand the end of every night.
Cash my first time was $250 cash.
$250 for 3 nights.
Yeah.
I walked out on Sunday with $750 cash in my pocket.
That's nice.
It was awesome.
So when did you end up going back to WWE after that? Was it years after that?
No, I would, like throughout the years, like I would kind of like go through spurts, kind of depending on how I was in the good graces of the chaotic office.
And that fluctuated.
That fluctuated
Greatly.
Rapidly and drastically. So, I mean, I did a bunch of different stints, to varying degrees. Sometimes it was the hurry up and wait, come here at 10 o'clock in the morning and you don't get to do anything and you stand around in your dress clothes and get to eat good catering. A couple times I got to have a good workout that, seemed to go all right. And, Jamie Noble at once seemed like he was kind of high on my work. I don't know. He gave me some good feedback. But, never really like anything substantial. You know, I got to do a spot with Heidenreich once with Handsome Psycho.
And another guy.
Yeah, Tony Omega. Is it just the four of us? I forget.
Wasn't
Two things you know about Tony Omega. There's a group going to TV. He's there, and he's never in the Final Four of Battle Royal. He'll be in the Final Five.
wasn't Andre Lyons one of them? And he
Yes,
he
he was.
He bumped early for Heidenreich.
No, that was me who bumped early.
Oh, pardon me.
Uh-oh.
Yes, I did. And I got left hanging. Handsome will be pissed if I don't mention that. Finlay comes to the back and like shakes everyone's hands and just skipped right over mine.
We appreciate all your work. Don't appreciate yours.
To this day, you're dead to Fit Finlay.
Oh, yeah. And then, you know, obviously Handsome was like, he hated that you bumped early. And to this day, I'm pretty sure he didn't even watch the spot. Didn't care that some idiot, you know, bumped a little early.
So we talked about you being a top babyface in chaotic wrestling. What led to you finally turning heel?
It's funny because for the longest time, you know, after my record-setting title reign at the time, you know, I had talked to Chaotic. I forget who was even booking then. I know, you know, Jamie has always been involved, so I kind of told him, you know, I've now been the top babyface for 7 or 8 years now. I've won the title. You know, I had a year-long title reign now. I was just like, you know, what are you going to really do with me? Like, I was like, you know, I think it's time to turn me heel. And, you know, I had been such an over baby face that it comes to the point where I'm almost typecast. You know, they were afraid that I couldn't work heel or it wouldn't get over. So then I kind of meandered about the tag scene and just kind of did random babyface work to the point where the crowd started to kind of turn on me, you know, because it was, it kind of like, you know, obviously it's not the same, but I'd compare it to like Cena these days. Like I had been through all of this. I lost my title. We did the cage match together. I lost that. So, you know, you were on your, you know, often doing your other thing, your own thing as the next champion. And I was kind of on the downstream, but like they just wanted me to still be happy-go-lucky, fiery, you know, babyface Chase Del Monte. But like the crowd,
no freaking sense.
yeah, like what am I so happy about? Like, you know, the thing that like I held for a year and loved and like, you know, that was everything to me and has now been taken away. And like I was basically told, like, you know, not in these terms, but like, you know, it's like, well, basically just disregard that and just continue to go on. And when, you know, the fans can pick up on that, especially the Chaotic fans that, you know, come to show after show after show and, you know, are so invested in the storylines, like it basically means like, kind of feels like, you know, I'm not selling my own storyline. So, you know, I like there was, you know, pockets of the audience that would then start booing me and stuff. I mean, usually by the end of it, you know, they would go along with it because Chaotic fans are, you know, pretty faithful and stuff. But, you know, it wasn't the, you know, loud booming reactions anymore. It was just kind of like the polite, like, oh, yeah, here comes, you know, that guy we like. So then I think it was around Cold Fury 10. So it was like a full year of kind of just like hanging out in limbo. Me and Julian were a tag team. We had some 3-way at Cold Fury. The Logans went over, and then something happened with Julian. I forget, something where he got taken off shows, and then we fit Ilya into the position. So me and Ilya were tagging up against the Logans. And I had this plan to turn heel coming out of that. Matt Logan would get injured in one of the earlier matches. And as I told him, I was just like, well, this is kind of the perfect time. Matt's got to be put on the shelf anyway. Why don't we do an angle where, you know, it's revealed that I'm the one who did it? So we did it in Lowell, where it's this big kind of like murder mystery with me and Brian, you know, like interviewing the locker room of who did it.
Remember these? I think these are on YouTube.
They are.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we come out to the ring together and, you know, do the old shtick about, you know, we're not going to let the show continue until the guy who attacked Matt shows himself. So then, you know, Brian's looking at the entryway. He's, you know, staring it down, waiting for somebody to come out, and I'm behind him. You know, after a few seconds, I start grimacing, turning to the crowd, just changing my facials, making sure they know what's about to happen. He turns around. I give him a gut shot with the baseball bat. We drag in a guardrail, and that was when I debuted the Cradle to the Grave pile driver. That was the very first one.
Really? The old barricades?
No. It was one of the gray ones. No, I would not have done one on one of those orange monsters.
You wouldn't be able to drag it into the ring.
Yeah, no. I would have needed Brian's help to get it in.
Man. So, I mean, you talked about the fact that you wanted to turn heel and you had this input. I mean, Brian can speak to this. The elder statesman, if you will, hope that isn't too offensive, of the locker room kind of have I don't know, carte blanche, but they have the ability to be able to have some influence over their storylines, and you certainly are no exception. I mean, should we talk about Chester Fernicola at this point?
We can. I mean, I don't know what I have to do with him. I mean,
Oh.
we are dear friends.
So this is something that's really like out in outer space.
So, yes, and the Logans to this day still call me an absolute lunatic for the fact that Chester Fernicola even exists. So the whole story with it was, at the time, and again, this is just a sign of the times, we were very low on promos. If and when we had a promo for a show, it was usually a guy in front of the gray and black background with the CW logo on it, just, maybe with an interviewer, but just like talking like a talking head promo. And I've always been a little bit more creative and somewhat insane. So I was thinking how can we do something different? And I was like, I want to be like interviewed, but I didn't want to just like somebody to interview me. And I was on a drive from work and I was like, I wonder if I could interview myself. So Harry Aaron at the time was doing production for Chaotic, and he's, somewhat, of a video whiz kid. So I texted him and I was like, is there any way we could do it? And the way I thought of it would just be like, we would film kind of like from a right facing angle, and we'd film, and I'd have like a beard and stuff, and then I'd film all like kind of have like a a couple different segments, and I would do promo as myself, as if I was answering questions, and then I would completely change my appearance, put on glasses, redo my hair, shave my face, put on a different outfit, and then we'd shoot it from the other side, like as if we were kind of looking at one another, and then I would ask the questions. When we got there, Harry actually told me that he would have a way of actually being able to split the screen. And we actually did end up then being able to do close-ups, but you can look up the video, it's on YouTube, but it's actually me sitting on my couch interviewing me with a cardboard cutout of me in the middle. And the cardboard cutout actually, ironically enough, was important because it gave Harry the split of where to cut. So he was able to use it, since it was with just a cutout of me, like as a mirror image. So he was able to split along that line and then have either half of the frame of me talking to myself, because then it was right in the middle of the couch, and then I was on the ends of the couch. So that's how he was able to split that.
A lot of pressure on himself too, because he had to get that baby lined up exactly.
Yeah, and he actually had two cameras, because if you watch the promo, it actually cuts to then close-ups of us. So then he was able to almost have a hard cam and then like a roving cam shots of me. I mean, he did a phenomenal job. And then I never thought it was going to be anything else besides this one just like wacky promo. And it was Tarzan who loved it. He's like, this is awesome. He's like, this is a great promo. Like, will you do more? And I was just like, yeah, sure. Like, what the hell? So I started to do and it kind of grew and grew, and you can actually follow them in chronological order, because they do steadily get better, and more well produced. And we started using green screens. Then I started having Pat, and then we added Cam. By the end of it, I had an entire news team. But the whole idea for Chester to wrestle was also Tarzan's. He had the idea, and I was just like, at this time, I had gone heel. I had done a pretty long program with the Logans, and then that ended, and I had done it. Now I was in a program with Biff. And after that, I forget if, Fury was on top then, I believe as a heel. But whatever it was, and I wasn't complaining about it, but, I wasn't going to be at the top of the card as Chase Del Monte. So, it was kind of like a chance to do something new, and I was just like, yeah, what the hell? We'll see what Chester Fernicola is as a wrestler. So that's why we did the Loser Leaves Town match at Cold Fury 12. And then a couple months later, Chester Fernicola would walk into the PAV for the first time.
And I think the transition back into Chase Del Monte was a little abrupt, right?
It was very abrupt.
Why was that?
We never really had an end game.
Right.
It just kind of came about, and at the time, we didn't really have any ideas of how to get out of it. I knew, and I had told Tarzan kind of going into it, that I knew this would have a limited shelf life. This wasn't going to be a gimmick that was going to last a year or two. It had a very limited time. and he had booked it, where I had taken the New England title as Chester from Mikey Webb, and then he wanted to do us a big rematch at Cold Fury, and I was like, in a Cold Fury crowd, I do not want to be Chester Frenicola, and we only had a couple months to get there. So, we basically just up and dropped it, and and Chester just announced on a show that, Chase Del Monte's back, and I just kind of walked in.
With the championship, right? He
bequeathed it to me.
Why wouldn't he?
Well, we're dear friends.
Sure are.
He had a opportunity at local access television that, was too good to pass up. And, it had been a year. I think the statute of limitations of my exile from my Loser Leaves Town match was over. So
not according to this fella.
That's a chaotic wrestling staple. Yeah, anyone who loses a Loser Leaves championship match, there's no way they're not coming back.
I did longer than Billy Kryptonites, which was what? A show?
I think this was a little bit, right?
No, I think he lost, and then he was the special guest referee at the very next show.
That sounds about right.
Where he shot either a drop kick or a body slam on you.
Oh, is that when he went crazy?
Yes.
Like hitting a bloody nose and stuff? Yeah, he did.
Chad Dick.
He's a special little snowflake, that one.
But he's a salesman now.
He sure is.
This time his Chad Dick is paying off.
Oh, my goodness. So, Brian, we talked about your run as the idea man in chaotic wrestling.
Yes. It's probably about the time I started to get involved with that, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. And your exit kind of led to...
I want to get into something here first, though. You like to stir the pot, Michael.
Right.
I'm going to stir the pot now.
Oh, boy.
Here we go.
So I'm responsible.
I know where this is going.
I'm responsible for the re-rise of Chase Del Monte as the top babyface in chaotic wrestling.
Yeah?
Yes. Like, what are you going to play dumb? You're going to play dumb now? I was an island on this idea. On putting Chase back at the top of the card. I was a man alone on this idea and completely behind it because I know, and Chase knows because I was talking to him through the entire thing. Like, as I was telling you guys what
Throw
I wanted
me under
to
the
do.
bus?
Yes, absolutely I am. Yeah, you love to stir the pot. You and Tarzan, and I want to say even Jamie, I think, was against it. I was like, he hasn't been on top in forever. Why not? It's fresh. It's new for us. And you were, no, it's not fresh. We did this so many years ago. I'm like, exactly. It's right now. It's fresh. Like it's.
So who was our man then, if not Chase?
Nobody else had any ideas.
Sounds about right.
So between me and nothing, you wanted nothing. Oh, ouch.
Oof.
It wasn't even that. He had nobody else had any of these concrete ideas, and I was like, no, I want, and I was like totally committed to it. Like I want to do this, and
I actually remember that phone call with you when you actually you pitched it to me, and it completely took me out of left field.
Because you're pretty entrenched as like a heel at that point, I think, or
I had done the feud with I'd come back as Chase. I was the New England champion. I beat Webb. Then me and Booker went into a feud. And I was a baby face kind of by default.
Right. Yeah.
Because going into the feud with Booker, Tarzan was kind of worried, and he's like, "Don't you want to be a heel?" And me and Booker go back to when I very first started and was coming up. And Booker had just come back on shows, and I was just like, "Listen, let me kind of, Booker helped me a lot when I was first starting. I was just like, I can have a great series of matches with Booker. I know that. And, Adam's not the flashiest, and he doesn't really jump off the page at you, but he's a phenomenal worker.
Adam is like the definition of like a solid hand. Like he's the type of guy who there's always a place for him.
Exactly. And he can be much more than that, if given the right foil. And I told him, I was just like, I don't even really have to be a baby face per se. I was like, I'm still going to do all the kind of like tweening kind of shit that I've done. I was just like, but the crowd between me and Booker is going to take to me because I'm their guy. Like, I'm known as like, and then after the Booker feud, I was like, then I'm kind of open. So after the Booker ladder match, I went back over for the title. And I had a couple like random matches, and I had one with like Julian, but even then Julian was a big baby face at that point. So I was still playing the heelish role. And that's when you had, got the idea from me, and we had a couple matches with Ilya, got him the New England title, and then we started that feud with Dijak. But I'll tell you, Brian, I was like, right here now, I will thank you because, that phone call kind of like re-inspired me, like it kind of like, you said all the things you kind of said, right now to Crockett, like you thought I was fresh, you thought I was the guy to do it. And like that kind of lit a fire under my ass. And I was just like, I want to be that guy.
And it was a different Chase Del Monte than that had been on top previously. You weren't, I mean, you're always you, but this is you're an adult now. It's like a more mature take on the babyface Chase Del Monte. And I certainly didn't want like powder blue, like come out to Bon Jovi again. Although Jamie fought me on that. Like I remember talking to you about that. Yeah, they want to put you out to Bad Medicine. You're like, no, absolutely not. Like,
I mean, oddly, what I just talked about, after losing the title to you at Cold Fury 9 is when you pitched it to me, like, and that's what you wanted from me. I was like, that's what I was like challenged by that because like now I would kind of come full circle, and to me it was a challenge of who is like Chase Del Monte as a babyface now, but mature and grown up, and not just coming out, running around the ring and stomping my foot and, having that high energy. But what is this newer version of me, this one who's now been, in Chaotic for over a decade, and how to kind of, get that character over and be something different and not come out to Bad Medicine, still use that, weird heel music that I was doing and still kind of, do some of the eccentric, heel stuff that I was doing, but rein it in and get that over as baby.
Yeah, and I remember that match at Cold Fury because initially it's funny on our regular shows. You were clearly the babyface. You were getting over as a babyface. At Cold Fury, at the beginning of the match, crowd was definitely a little more pro Dijak, and I was very nervous. And then by the end, they were ecstatic when you won, and that was the peak of feeling for me as like a booker. Like me and Tarzan were like, we felt so good about everything. Came off perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. Like it was all downhill from there for me as booker.
For me as well. That stands out to me as one of the highlights. I mean, that was, just a great culmination of everything. Like, the match itself, I kind of knew going in, and it's one of those times where as like a worker, sometimes like when the match is just going exactly the way you want it, and like you have that time to kind of like stop and pause and like almost like look around and just be like, yep, like this is where it was. Cause I a big crowd like that, they're going to take the Dijak. Like, I mean, guy looks like a star. He is like, so like, I knew that I was going to have to fight for it. Like I was going to have to be the baby face and just let him kick the crap out of me, and he did.
yes, he did.
I took a beating, and I got my little high spots in, and did the big spots to get the crowd behind me. But I just let him beat the crap out of me, and if you just keep coming, the people are going to eventually get behind somebody who won't say no. But I remember that. I mean, that was a great feeling, that match. It, definitely a highlight.
Yeah, and Michael wasn't behind it, so all right. That's the whole point of it, just to throw Michael under the bus.
So give me back that spoon. Let me stir the pot again, because the irony of you flying the flag for Chase Del Monte so many years later, as opposed to the blood feud between the two of you we teased at the beginning. How did this come so far from in the very beginning when you guys literally, as a shoot, as the kids say, hated each other?
We're in a word, we grew up.
Yeah,
I think I will say this, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but fuck it. Like, I feel like we were pitted against each other. Because to this day, if you ask me why I didn't like you, I have no clue. I have literally no clue. There's not one moment in time that I can point to that you ever did anything to me. I think we found out certain people were throwing gas on the fire, and maybe not lying, but definitely, a little
stirring the pot.
Yeah,
it wasn't me.
I do completely agree, 100%. People saw what was going on and definitely fanned the flames. But both me and Brian, especially at those days, we were both stubborn. We were both pig-headed. We were both passionate. First things first, I would say, even at the epic peak of like our heat with one another, we were always professional. Always. I remember maybe it was MWF, but there was a match and we basically weren't even on speaking terms. Like, we would come in, we would shake each other's hands, but then that was basically it with one another. But whenever we would have to work, like, we would talk, we would get through the match, we would,
the chemistry was good.
Yeah, we would come back afterwards, we would, talk about the match, we would talk about what happened, sing each other's praises, then split the locker room, goodbye. But, again, the situation in the business were just so much different back then. The CTC environment, the only way to get to TV back then was to be in the good graces of Chaotic. And there was only limited amount of spots. And for better or worse, Chaotic would use that to their utter advantage. And, they wanted us not hating each other, but they did want us kind of competing for that. And with those limited spots, there comes with heat. And, I could be an abrasive person.
Me too.
And neither of us are one to back down or, kind of give an inch. So when you have two people like that, and we have, again, we're constantly feuding with each other on shows. So we're always kind of on the different side of the coin. We're, working together, but we had different friends, we had different, circles. So it was just kind of like something that like almost like naturally came about. But like, I mean, to Brian's point, like you'd never have done anything.
Nothing ever happened between us.
Like there's never been an actual incident. Like,
we had that one heated discussion we alluded to. Like it was,
yes.
There was, it was.
I forgot that Fred got involved with that. So
yeah,
It was upstairs at the PAV, right?
It was upstairs.
Because I remember walking up and hearing raised voices and turning on a dime,
Shocking.
walking back downstairs.
Shocking.
So I don't even remember how it all started, but it was at the PAV.
Yeah, you were texting Fury. You guys were making fun of me. I could clearly see you guys making fun of me.
I do remember that. I don't even remember. Like it wasn't. I don't even remember like what we were saying. But we were like like giving each other iggies and stuff, and like nodding, and like we were being blatant. And then I walked upstairs to go to the bathroom, and you followed me up, and you're just said like do we have an issue here? And then I was just like, I don't know, you tell me. And like and it's like. Then that's when it kind of came out, because it was just like, well, what's your problem with me? And it's like, I don't know. Why do you have a problem with me? And like when we both asked that question, it was like, I don't know.
We started comparing notes.
Yeah, it was just like
Fred Sampson, Darren Young walks by and goes, I shouldn't be here.
He literally walked over, like started walking down the hallway, saw that we were having like, we were just like talking over a match. Like saw that we were involved, and he's like, I shouldn't be here. It was like literally about faced, and then just walked right back down.
Yeah, but it was like one of those things. Like we started comparing notes. We started realizing, like, I don't know if we walked away in that moment as friends. But we walked away of like, okay, this is done. Like, this needs to end. Like,
and I mean, again, it comes from being more mature now, and like even then, by the end of it, we were more mature. But like, I think we never really had a conversation around it. Like, even when the three of us made a trip down to ECWA, like there was still kind of heat, but both of us were professional enough. Like, we're not going to sit there in silence in a car ride or make it awkward for you, or like,
Crockett does that.
I said
or like,
silence.
or have it out for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, if on our first car ride, like I had been shotgun and you were driving, or vice versa, and we would have just been like, so what's the deal?
Yeah, what is
like,
this?
Why don't we like each other? Like, we probably would have laughed about it and like been, better friends a lot sooner.
I mean, the core of it probably is like we're just different. We're just different people.
Yeah.
Like we run in different circles. We like different things. The biggest thing me and you have in common is we love and are passionate about pro wrestling.
Yeah,
and Seinfeld.
And Seinfeld, yes. But I think that probably was it. And when you're not actively talking to somebody, like if we'd been hanging out on the weekends, or whatever, like it would have been different. But like then when you're not talking, then you start doing the whole drawing connections and like literally fabricating things. And it just, it was. But I think at the crux of it was we're different people, and we're two guys in our 20s full of, piss and vinegar and testosterone and Lord knows what else, and just wanting the same fucking thing. Like,
I think we both spin up pretty easily.
Yes,
it's what makes us, workers and stuff. We're emotional people, like, and like we're quick to get fired up and stuff. So and people know that, and they know we have like an issue with each other. So like someone throws a little jab, like Malonis might have just like said something in passing, like, "Oh, is that Chase's bag?" and like kicked it. This is not an actual incident. But, and then then someone comes over to me, "Oh, Malonis kicked your gear bag," and it's like, that son of a bitch, he did what? But like it's just easy stuff. Like like there was already a spark there, so like every little drop of gasoline is just so much easier to rise. And again, you don't even
never
know.
talked about it. That was the thing. We never
Exactly.
talked about it, so it just built until that moment, and then after that, I mean, there's never been another thing. I mean,
No.
I know we want to get into the transition of when I started to leave Chaotic. There was a void, and somebody had to fill it. And Chase, was being the most senior guy, he filled that void. And when I left, and I did leave altogether completely as well. I mean, there's never been another moment where at least we didn't talk about shit, even if there were things we didn't agree on or whatever, or we've always kept the line of communication open. And that's been the difference between when we were 24, 25 years old till now. It's, hey, here's how I'm feeling. Hey, here's how I'm feeling. Oh, okay, cool, whatever. All right.
Because if you remember, when you first pitched me Cold Fury 14 with me and Dijak, I pushed for you to turn me heel. I pushed to be the heel in that scenario.
To be him.
And you had told me, that's not what I want. He's like, I want, a mature Chase babyface. Again, I took it as a challenge. I was just like, all right, that's what I'll do. And it's like, again, that's not what I wanted. And if I had influence or whatever, but we never argued about it. I never was hot about it. I was just like, all right, I see your point. And if you're booking, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And I think flip side too, there's been things that I all right, that's what you want me to do. Cool. Here's what I thought. Cool. All right, I'll do it. But I think you've been a guy, and I've always been a guy too, for the most part, that's add your 2 cents, but you're professional enough to, okay, that's what you want. I will do it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, because going into that transitional period when you kind of stopped doing it, it really was a natural thing. It is ironic that it was you who did it, but you kind of created this version of Chase that still is kind of hanging around, because by the time you left, I had become, and after everything that happened with Preston, so I ended up, getting the title back and, basically became
that could be a whole nother podcast.
but he ended up becoming, one kind of giant title reign, where I was kind of the top guy in the company, and you had left, and then Tarzan had left, or maybe Tarzan was still booking for another show. But all I told Jamie was just I've been around for 12 years at this point. I was just let me help you. I was just I'm your top guy. I was just I might have, a little bit more ability to help you. I love Tarzan. I loved working with him. The stuff I did with Brian and Biff, was great. But, I was just Tarzan was not a chaotic guy. He just kind of came in and started booking. And again, I love the Tarzan years. They were great, but I was just what did he do that I didn't? I was just what credentials or resume did he submit? Let me help here.
And me, it was more just happy accident. I was working at Undercover Wear, and Tarzan started to slip away. You started to slip. Well, I say you. Mike Crockett started to slip away, and I kind of filled that void. And then before I knew it, I guess I'm the booker now. I guess that's me. But yeah, it's we've come a long way.
Very true.
And let's get into, we're leading into Cold Fury 17 this Friday night, Haverhill, Massachusetts.
Can you believe that we've been on 14 of these?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a claim to fame or claim to shame.
So what are you looking forward to seeing in Haverhill?
What am I looking forward to seeing?
Yeah.
Certainly the main event, JT Dunn and Ilya. JT came on board right as I had turned heel. Basically, all of 2016 was me and JT. We went a different way in the end, but, his whole path in Chaotic, at least, to me has been a very interesting arc. And now for it to kind of come full circle at Cold Fury with everything that he's kind of been through. And, I feel like he really has that kind of old school mentality of the place that Chaotic was back in the day, and that kind of indie mentality of, Chaotic is the place to be. And that kind of fuel is really, fueling him and, Ilya to be the heel that, it's really now catching on and engaging in the way that his babyface character really wasn't, I think is going to make for just a great, great match.
So you want to talk about an indie dream match? How about Josh Briggs versus a guy who's been in the news a lot recently, Eddie Edwards?
Oh boy, old baseball face.
That's gonna be a big one.
No, Eddie's one of the best I've ever stepped in the ring with. I absolutely love working with him. And Josh, I just found out the other day how young he is. Because he
mind-blowing.
Because he looks so just old and grizzled from his look. But he's got nothing but upside and potential, and to work with somebody like Eddie is just going to, really, I think, tap into another side of him. One's going to be a show stealer.
And plus, you got Tommy Dreamer and some friends coming, I'm hearing.
We do. It'll be an extreme contingent. And let's not bury the lead. I'll be on the card as well. Me and Mike Verna.
There you go.
Been chasing each other, pardon the pun, for almost a year now. And this will actually be our first advertised one-on-one match, even though that we have been, again, battling and kind of bumping heads for almost 12 months.
And we were there live the last time you were in Haverhill when
boy.
something happened to you, Chase. We've talked about this on the podcast
So
as well.
I got the piece of metal upstairs.
Ooh.
Please don't show us.
So yeah, you were in a cage match, like a war game style match, and you found yourself, your arm was somehow connected to the cage.
Yeah, I have I'm so creative that I even come up with new injuries that have never happened. So yeah, I was taking the old buckle bomb, but this time into the cage, and I hit the cage wall and kind of slid down the cage, in between the cage and the rope. So I'm kind of on the apron, and I had no idea it happened. Like I did not feel a single thing. Verna comes and tries to pull me off the cage to pull me into the ring to try and pin me. And I just feel like I could tell I'm stuck because I'm not moving. But again, there's no pain or anything. So I'm just kind of like kicking him away. And I'm like, I'm stuck. So like I look, and it was kind of right at the edge of my wrist tape. So I thought it had hooked under my tape. So as I start to kind of pull my arm up just to kind of loosen my wrist tape, I see my skin start to pull like a Saw movie. Like, it's just like stretching. And I'm like, I think that's in my arm. So I do it again, and I'm like, oh, yeah. That's in my arm.
I felt it.
Vomit.
So I call, Bass comes over to check on me. And I go to Bass, and he's like, what's going on? What's going on? And I was like, don't freak out, but I'm stuck in the cage. And he's like, you're stuck in the cage. And I move my arm a little bit, and he sees it, and he's just like, go! And he goes running away from me. I'm like, no, don't do that. So then, and obviously, it's who would ever expect that to happen? But then the ring crew kids all come like running over to me. One of them is just like, brace yourself. I'm going to pull you loose. And I was like, don't you dare. But then, people are freaking out. Jamie comes over, he's going to stop the match. I'm demanding that he not stop the match. Keep it going. It's just like, finally they get a pair of wire cutters. I guess watching it back, it wasn't that long, but it felt like I was stuck in that cage for an eternity. And like, it's just, the injury mentality of where everyone's hovering over you. And I just want everyone away from me. And I'm just like telling them, I was like, just get me loose, just get me loose, just get me loose. And then finally I was able to cut loose, and they're like trying to pull me out of the cage. And I just see Verna and, they really couldn't communicate. So I just kicked him in the face, which I'm prone to do anyway.
It's happened.
So and I just lay on top of him, and I think they had rung the bell, but I'm just like demanding that Rich, register the 3 count, and people are asking me what the hell I'm doing. But, again, show goes on. It's just a little piece of metal in my arm.
Gross.
So Verno hopefully will kick you right in the face this Friday night.
No, hopefully history will repeat itself, and
Okay.
without the metal in my arm, I will be victorious.
So it is chaoticwrestling.com to get your tickets. Are there still tickets available?
There are still tickets available. Front row is sold out, as I believe so is second row, but there are third row and general admission floor seats and bleacher seats available.
It is a nice facility. And what is the college?
It's Northern Essex Community College.
All right, that's Haverhill,
Do
Massachusetts.
you think you could do us a solid, though, Chase? Could you hook Mike up with a discounted ticket? Please don't make him pay full price.
Well, he can still pay, just not full
Oh,
price?
yeah. Just give him a discounted ticket, yeah.
All right, I can do that.
It doesn't have to be a good seat.
No, it's going to be bleachers.
That's very nice of you. Really appreciate it. So thank you very much, Chase Del Monte.